Here's one of our gliders with some cool wings. We got LED lights that light up. I'm sure Michael could put a whistle in it if we ask him to. But we were asked to do some other 3D printing. My daughter works in a clinic in Nogales, Mexico, volunteers down there, and she had a patient that had a 4-year-old boy who was with his grandfather and had stuck his hand in a meat grinder. And he'd lost a good chunk of his hand, except he still had the upper part of his hand and he had some wrist movement. And Holly had asked one of her friends to do some 3D printing for her, and she was unable to. And I said, well, I know somebody who does 3D printing. We'll see if he can do it. So we enlisted Michael, and he 3D printed a hand. Angel wanted blue, so we printed it in blue. You can see some tendons there. That's the beginning of the hand. This inexpensive hand has been featured in National Magazine, Parade Magazine that comes with the Sunday paper. And here are a couple of the patients with the hands. Yasina, Angel, and Yasina with my daughter Holly. And she actually needed 2 hands. She had gotten a meningitis disease. And here's a couple videos. We're going to go ahead and pass this around. It normally has Velcro, which straps to your forearm, and Velcro, which straps here. Go ahead and watch the videos.
Angel was pretty pleased with his hand.
He was pretty excited about it. The next video you'll see. So there's usually Velcro that straps to your forearm and Velcro that straps to what's left your hand. And then when you bend your wrist, the hand closes. So I'll go ahead and pass that around. We also added some little sticky fingers for me. You can actually try picking up some things. So this, for us, was an amazing experience to have these kids be able to use their hands again. Here's some more advanced hands. These are very expensive, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, an experimental hand, 27 degrees of freedom, etc. But that's going to be a little expensive for somebody in Mexico. I think this hand maybe was $5 in parts, $5 or $10 in parts, and you have something that you can use. If you recall the parts of the glider, the parts of the glider, as I said, have a Arduino, a microcontroller. They have a servo motor and 3D printed parts. So this is a little more advanced hand that was made by students at the University of Central Florida, and these are the same basic components that we used in our glider: the microcontroller, servo motor, and the 3D printed parts. So this is a hand that was made for a 6-year-old, and he was able to hug his mom for the first time with 2 hands and shake hands. He had a little higher amputation, and he had electronics attached to his muscles, and when he moved his muscles, the hand would open and close, and he could shake hands and pick things up, and even ride a bike. So that was a pretty cool experience. So there's no telling where this technology, learning about the microcontrollers, the 3D printing, and these other things, where that can take you. We didn't imagine that making a glider could lead to something like this. Did you want to talk about this hand?
Sure. So this is another 3D printed, couple of 3D printed hands in this video here. Which one's the laser? The bottom? The middle? Okay. Well, no laser, but so this one up here, it's actually a 6 degree of freedom 3D printed hand. It's made by a guy who, he was in his 20s. He quit his job at a big engineering firm and launched an Indiegogo campaign, raised money to make this. His dream is a $1,000 electric hand. He's made a custom Arduino circuit board with motor controllers for each of the fingers, and there's a second one for the thumb motion. And that's actually an old version that's pictured there. His new version, and this is kind of a forerunner of that, uses this flexible filament. So it's all printed in one piece instead of about 30 pieces with a whole bunch of fasteners and all kinds of stuff. So this is a miniature hand. We can play the video of this guy running. His new full-size hand has 6 axes and is printed in just a few pieces. So this is a miniature hand gripping. So it's a single servo pulling on 5 tendons. And that little guy's tiny. He sells them for, I think, like maybe $80 or so for robotics. And it's just a few 3D printed parts and a little Arduino inside that drives a servo. Okay, he has a full-size hand as well, but don't have a video of that. So there's some pretty cool stuff going on with 3D printing and prosthetics. It's a really good fit for the technology. So this was recorded at a conference for these 3D printed, inexpensive hands that was in Baltimore last year. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about recording video using the glider. And this is something that you guys might get a chance to do out on the Eastern Shore later on. This is a really good reason to make your gliders work really well. Because this can tell you about the challenges of flying a glider actually in the ocean or in the bay.
So it's one thing to make a glider in the shop and swim it in a little horse trough or in a controlled area. It's another thing to go to a tropical island and go to a reef and get in the water with a glider and have it work. Some things I had to consider was just getting all the glider parts to Hawaii. We'd had an incident a few years ago trying to fly out of Colorado Springs. Michael decided to take the glider onto the plane or through TSA. The glider, as you may note, has a power supply. It's got a microcontroller. It's got shrapnel in the form of BBs used for ballast. And it's got a compression chamber. It's got 4 of the things I look for somebody trying to carry a bomb onto the plane. I thought Michael had overslept. You'll notice he was late today. I thought, oh no, Michael's not going to make it. Oh well, he's not going to make it to the flight. Michael was having a nice discussion with TSA back in the holding room for an hour. Somehow, with his government ID, he was able to explain what he was doing, that it's really a glider, it's not a bomb. They took his glider and made him check it, and then they escorted him, one on each side, to the plane, sat him down in the seat, and he was able to fly. Since then, we've been very careful about transporting the glider. So in order just to get the gliders to Hawaii where I was going, I took them apart, I took out the batteries, I put them in here, and in case anybody got curious about what it was, I even put in a sheet of paper with my card on it that said exactly what it was. The other thing I did was I have done some snorkeling. I've done some snorkeling on several islands. I've been in the water. I practiced doing a little swimming and relaxing in the water, so I wasn't getting too excited. You saw what can happen to things in the water with that Ramus AUV. You got to be relaxed. You got to be confident. Does anybody do any swimming in here? Any? No swimming. No swimmers at all. Nobody can swim.
It's not calling for volunteers. All of a sudden, like, I don't know if I want him to know I swim it.
I went to the Germantown pool in the South Recreation Fair, and what do you notice when you first go in as compared to other pools when you go into that pool?
Which pool?
The one at Germantown. Have you been in that pool?
Yeah, but like which of the three?
The big pool.
Oh, it's cold. It's really deep.
It's really deep. I jumped in that pool, and I looked down, and there's no bottom. It was, where I first jumped in, it was 15 feet, and I think it goes to 17 feet for the diving. It has a high dive. So it gave me a pretty good feel for what it's like to get out there in the ocean. And I also practiced a type of swimming called total immersion, which is the kind of relaxed swimming that some triathletes use to conserve energy. You use your whole body. You keep most of your body flat on the water. You keep your arms submerged, and you save energy. You aren't wasting energy. For triathletes, they're saving energy for the bike, like the Ironman 112-mile bike and the 26.2-mile run. So I did that. Anyway, I got to Hawaii, and I said, well, we better test this out in the pool and see how it works, because you can see all the iterations with the buoyancy engine, and you can see in the film the students in Alaska had lots of problems. It's not if things will go wrong, but when they're going to go wrong and if you're prepared for them. So go ahead and play this film for you. With fish, we added some fish to give it.
Tropical music on.
Here's the GoPro on the glider. This particular glider right here. Notice the brass weights. I slid those back to counterbalance the camera. I put a safety tether on the camera, a little extra safety tether on the camera. Palm trees, shadows of palm trees. So I had 3 cameras to get that footage. I had one on the GoPro, I had somebody outside the pool, and I had myself in the pool taking footage to combine all that. Of course, the pool isn't the ocean. What's the first thing I'm going to have to deal with when I took this glider into the ocean? What's that? Salt water, exactly. It's going to change my buoyancy. I had it all balanced up. For fresh water, and I had to be able to change the ballasting. In fact, I had to think about that a little bit, and I had a lot of quick attach brass pieces. I had the two brass bars under here, and I had to be able to, in the water, I had to be able to attach extra brass to change the ballast,
Thank you for getting the lights on.
which turned out to be pretty handy, actually in the water and being able to add ballast and ballast it the way I wanted to, get it to go down. This next film is at a place called Two Steps. It's by a national park in south of Kona, Hawaii. And the water, you jump in and you're in the water about 10 feet, and then it drops off to 25 feet. So it gets pretty deep. I also had to attach some type of a tether to here. I attached a bobber with a tether that I held in my hand because I don't know that I could dive 25 feet. I could maybe dive, I can dive to the bottom of a regular pool. I can dive 10 feet. I can dive 12 feet maybe. But if the glider, something happened to the glider, it didn't come up, I don't know if I can get it at 25 feet. So I had a tether attached to it. GoPro, as John mentioned earlier, or Michael, $400, government property. Oops, lost it in Hawaii, sorry. Okay, go ahead and...
You can grab the legs again.
So this is from above, and this is the glider in a reef area. Lots of beautiful coral and some fish. So these are first shots are a couple shots of the glider at depth. I'm above on the surface, and I'm holding a little hand tether and following the glider as it flies. I overweighted it to get it deep, and then it's kind of gliding up and down at that depth. There's a little bobber just came into the screen. The bobber was approximately 7 or 8 feet from the glider. And you can hear some swimming sounds on the GoPro. Part of what I'd like to have somebody do as a project is I try to identify some of the different types of coral that are seen in some of these films that I have. And this is probably the deepest we've ever had it. This is probably in the ocean. This is probably approaching 20 feet. And these are shots from the camera on the front of the glider.
The motion of the glider is nice and smooth. It's a good platform for filming.
Yeah, that was one thing we discovered, was that because it's nice and smooth, you can notice the filming isn't as shaky as the filming from above. Also, we realized you couldn't just program a glider and let it go unless you had some sensors on it to react to the topography, because there was undulating topography down here. These are some fish that didn't seem bothered at all. I was way up on the surface, maybe 18 feet above, and the fish didn't seem to be bothered at all by the glider. So the glider could go down there without disturbing the fish. Another thing I'd like to have somebody do is identify some of the tropical fish in here. The sound is turned off at the moment on purpose, because with the motor running, all you can hear is the sound of the cylinder going back and forth and the servo running.
That's, when we first recorded video with the GoPro attached to the glider, it's real noisy. But when we recorded some video where what we call far field noise, just a couple feet away, the glider really doesn't make much noise. It's only if you're touching it that it makes some noise, because we have a noisy cheap motor. But it's one big advantage of the glider is there's no propeller. It's not making any noise.
Have you guys tried taking it and doing almost like the selfie version of it, where it's sticking out and you can see the glider?
Oh no! Put a selfie stick on the glider. Well,
You
so
can
there was
do that on the Eastern Shore when you go.
there was a shot. Well, so one thing we
I don't know the
we
water
did
was
in Alaska was mount the GoPro kind of on the
If
tail
you'll,
of the glider.
if you'll watch,
so that
you'll
you
see
can
a
the
fish.
nose.
You'll see a fish come
We have done
and
that.
check out the glider. So this is a fish. Another one I'd like to have identified. Kind of stops a minute, checks out the glider, and then swims on its way. School of fish. Like to have those identified. They don't seem bothered at all by the glider, just swimming along there with them. So the glider can do some things. This miniature glider can do some things a full-size glider can't. There may be some applications that are particular to this mini glider. There's another school of other fish just appearing below that first school. Those need to be identified. And so it was pretty good. Now I did kind of keep in the back of my mind that there are other things in this area that are bigger than me. And in fact, in this particular area, they had from time to time seen hammerhead sharks, blacktip reef sharks. So I was kind of aware of that. I used to work in the woods, and there were bears and rattlesnakes, but the most dangerous thing, what do you think it was when I worked out in the forest in Oregon? It wasn't people, it wasn't rattlesnakes, it wasn't bears. What was the most dangerous thing that we had problems with out in the forest of Oregon? Any ideas? Yeah, animal.
Wild boar?
No wild boars. Nope. Good hypothesis, though. What? Little buzzy things. Bees. Certain times of year in the fall, you'd walk around and the bees would come out with you. So, same thing out in the ocean. I never saw a shark, but there was something that was a problem. Wasn't jellyfish, but it turns out to be spiny sea urchins. If you happen to touch them getting in or out, you could get a real bad sting from those. We tried an experiment and we discovered some things that we never really thought of. I turned the motor off and had the GoPro. I was just towing the glider along, and the GoPro was recording the sounds that were in the water. So let's see if we can do that and maybe.
I don't have it in the deck, but just tell me I have it.
So this was a film in a different location, a little shallower, and I put a red filter on the camera to see if I could get a little better contrast. You'll notice in that first film, things were all blue-green because of the way properties of light, the way water absorbs light.
What was it called then?
It was called Cetacean Mobilization 2. When I was out in this deep area, I also had a friend who was out in the water for quite a while, and she got a little hypothermic, and got in some of the deeper water. The actual depth dropped off to 100 feet in certain areas, and then I had myself and another guy, we had to pull her back to shore a little bit. So actually out in the field, you don't know what's going to happen. I was out in the water for like over an hour and a half with flying the little glider. I was amazed at the durability and how long it went. But after an hour and a half, I was getting a little cold. Here we go. Let's see if we can turn the sound way up. And you may hear some sounds that I'd like to get identified, which is another creature, as well as these fish. So you end up flying a glider down at the eastern shore on your field trip. There's no telling.
He's talking, and he, just so you know, he's referring to Wallops Island. A Wallops Island trip.
Wallops Island trip, getting a glider with a GoPro in there, it could be pretty interesting. But you know, you guys are in a house, the math, science, computer science. So it's an integrated idea, integrated studies. So there's all this technology. There's also biology. There's also science to be thinking of. Anybody have any questions? Did we have anything else, Michael? We have. You want to talk about?
Remote.
Yeah, this guy's ready to go.
Yeah, you know, what I'd like you to see is some of the upgrades that you're going to see this year from last year. And then I personally would like all of you beyond the sensors to be thinking about upgrades that you believe you can contribute to this project.
Well, I guess
So.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go.
So this is ready to go here, Michael.
Alright, so let's show it up. Alright, so we've got a few improvements here that you might be able to see. One thing is we have a new circuit board, which hopefully you guys will have. If not, you can build the old one. It's not that big a deal. But so this is the old circuit board right here, that white board, and it's a proto board. So let me set it down. Yeah. So that's a proto board, and you have to solder in a bunch of wires. It's easy to kind of make mistakes with that. So John designed a custom circuit board, which I have here, and that's a good idea. So here's a proto board, and here's our custom circuit board, and we can pass this around, but it's got slots for all the components, and it all just drops in and goes together very quickly. So that's one improvement. Another thing that we've got this year is we're using a 9-volt battery that's rechargeable, which is really nice. It was previously a pretty big pain in the butt to change batteries. This is what the old battery pack looked like. It is a tangled mess of tape and It's a bunch of AAAs. Hard to see, but changing these batteries involves removing all that tape and wiring and swapping out the batteries, whereas this one just pops right out. So inside there are 2 lithium cells, and there's actually a little power regulator circuit board, which does fault protection. So if you short the terminals across the top here, it won't short circuit, it'll just cut out instead of shocking you or causing a fire or discharging the battery. So that's nice. So I'm going to do one more feature, do a little demo of it. So we're running our glider. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So we have an infrared receiver and a remote control. So here's our remote. I mean, it's just a little cheap little remote, but I can now pause the glider mid-cycle. So here's the thing: you put all this stuff inside the bottle, and you get it working on your bench top, and then you want to go, get on the bus and go to Carter Rock and fly your glider. You have to open it back up and turn it off. But now you can pause it and have it all ready. Everything's working perfectly, and then just press play again, and it picks right back up. This also helps a lot for the ballasting procedure. So we didn't talk a whole lot about ballasting. We did talk about the moving mass, the angle of attack, positive pitch on the way down and negative on the way up, depending on your coordinate system. But you're going to need to play around. You're going to discover this. You have to have a very well balanced glider, because it needs to, when it moves that weight forward, it needs to be balanced enough so that you get pitch downward when the weight's forward and pitch up when the weight's back. If you're not what's called trim, then you might get a really good dive, but then on the way back up, you might just kind of go up or maybe even go backwards if you've got an opposite angle of attack on the way back up. So we've got a new procedure with this new buoyancy engine where you can command it to go to the center point and adjust the trim so you get it perfectly level and just barely negatively buoyant, or positively buoyant rather. And that way, when you take in water, you'll know that you'll sink, and when you push the water back out, you know you'll float again. And so you can also jog it in one direction or the other by pressing the arrow keys. So with these new features, it's a lot easier to use the glider and get it running really well. And we can do relay races, which will be fun. Yeah. So when you don't have any kind of remote control at all, your glider's just running. You can't line up a whole bunch of gliders at the start line and press go. So we're hoping to have some nice relay races this year that involve less luck and more skill. So that's a quick summary. There's one other thing actually that I want to point out. Maybe I'll just skip the document camera. So this is one of the last year gliders, and for those who are ambitious, who'd like to try something cool, we have something that is optional, but you might find beneficial. This servo mount, you'll notice it sticks out kind of on either side a little bit. And to get it in the bottle, you can't just put it straight in because of this little piece that sticks out the bottom. You have to kind of like go around the corner and you can get it in. I've practiced it a lot, so I can do it pretty easily, but it's a little tight. So we have a new servo mount that we're testing. We don't have instructions for it yet. So if you'd like to try this one out, it's actually, in some ways, it's a little easier to put together. There are fewer screws and things. It uses screws that go around the perimeter. I'll show this on the document camera, but it doesn't have that little thing that sticks out the bottom. So it'll just go straight in. which is real nice. But like I said, we don't have instructions for that, so that we'll leave that up to you whether you want to try out the new version. We like it. We're probably going to move to it in the future, but we haven't tested it either, so you guys are good guinea pigs. So I'll show that on the document camera.
Yes.
So this one right here. So these are the two.
The wings aren't screwed down on the sample that I'm passing around. I just push the wings in. Normally the wings have screws in them to hold them secure. And normally there's 2 long bars of brass in addition to all that brass that's on there.
So these are the 2 versions, and this one has the screws go in radially, whereas this one we've got screws going in on this side and nuts on the other side, and you have to like kind of hold the nuts with pliers. And this one, the screws go straight into the plastic around the perimeter, so we can pass them around.
That's the bell, yeah.
You can see them. So that's
the
our bell.
Yeah, you
All right.
made it to the end. So you can see that what you're doing. This is one that, again, they went and found a shark fin that they like, or shark tail, and then they tried to make more like ray
Yeah, so this
type
one's
wings.
screws go in the side.
We will be doing these, and we will see if we can get Miss Bradshaw to buy us a GoPro.
No instructions, but
So we can put a GoPro on ours and let it go like a pro. So. Is that blocking the camera?
Oh no. We'll actually use the videos. We gave 7 of these in 1 week.